How are you, David?
I'm doing well.
First thing is first. How is this coffee? Yes! You're smiling more than usual, David.
I'm halfway through and I think this might go a couple hours.
This is bulletproof coffee, and by tradition, I mean, it's only episode 2, but I guess we made it a tradition already. Is like we like to prime our guests, David. Mm-hmm. And what better way to prime a guest is by just, pumping with bulletproof coffee, which is basically grass-fed butter and followed by brain octane, which is basically MCT oil on crack.
Interesting.
And then we put it into Vitamix. And then before you know it, you're smiling more than usual, bro. Right. And I think there is a certain closeness that I have with Aiden because we're simply the same sex. Just like a guy-to-guy relationship. And I was wondering if same exists for you when it comes to your baby boy relative to how you feel about your baby girls.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question because having 2 girls first, I didn't know anything else, and that just became the norm. And, people would who had boys would tell me, yeah, it's totally different. And I'm just, thinking, okay, well, that's fine. But, we're going to have a 3rd kid. It could be a boy or a girl. I'm obviously happy either way, and so it wasn't like I was, dying to have a boy, and that was why we had a 3rd kid. It was just I'm happy in either way, and I was just kind of almost expecting a girl and just being like, I know what I'm getting into. I love this, and it's great. So we have a boy, which is great, just to have some different dynamic in the household, and it is a lot different. It is a different scenario, and I find the little guy gravitates towards me more, so maybe there is something to be said, and we have our things that we do. It's different in the way that I can just be a little, rougher with him, and
You're right.
The way that emotionally he just kind of gets over things a lot faster than I was used to with having 2 girls. Mm-hmm. So in that respect, there are those noticeable different things that I think are pretty expected, I guess, or just based on that. But yeah, it's like I said, it's just a really awesome dynamic.
It's funny because at first I thought it would be, I judged myself a little bit to acknowledge that, to acknowledge that. But at the same time, it really boiled down to the actual truth of it. Yeah, there are certain tendencies that is different in my boy. It's different. It's uniquely refreshing. Mm-hmm. that I look forward to. And he does gravitate towards me in a crazy way. I always remember Celine was more gravitated towards her mom. I mean, she does, trick her with chocolates, which is, I mean, I will gravitate to anyone that tricks me with chocolate. Like, forget it, whatever. I mean, there's a little bit of a, shady tactics going on there, but Aiden, it's funny because as soon as I enter into the room, she starts screaming from across the house. It's like a messiah has entered in, like, ah, like, is that for me? And then it's flattering.
Absolutely.
I think that's the word that it's extremely flattering, and it makes you want to do more because of it, because you're receiving that acknowledgement, and the fact that you're receiving that acknowledgement makes you want to do more.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And how did your personal relationship got impacted with having the 3rd kid involved? How do you guys manage home and work?
I mean, Parachute as a company has been really flexible in the fact that we've always worked from home. So that's always given me the ability to be around and do the things that I really enjoy doing. Walking the kids to school every day is like the highlight, right? Just getting outside, getting them active, all those things that you're just a part of. So that certainly helps where we're not in these situations where we're running off to work and trying to figure out, how are we going to deal with the day-to-day life of getting kids to school and lunches and all that. My wife has a job that's pretty local to us, so that really helps just, again, in timing. I can't imagine, again, living outside of the GTA, and I'm thinking about how I would commute to work every day. And
you're one of the very few.
Right. Yeah, I know. So, I mean, honestly, we'll get into work later, but that was always a big sort of thing for me was, how do I get into a situation where I don't have to do that commute? I don't have to, do all the things that require an office in Toronto. And it's funny now that we're, getting away from that. And I've been in that for, 10 years or so. Yeah. And that's, I guess, unfortunate for me. I was just like, they found my secret sauce of like figuring out how to work in kind of the work-life balance. But
I'm still working on my secret sauce. Were you born and raised in Canada?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really strayed too far from where I was born. And,
it's a big world out there, David.
Yeah, it is. And I love visiting and traveling and getting to a lot of places, but it's home for me. And I have like a great set of, my family's there. I have a great set of friends that have kind of stayed just because we're in this, really comfortable spot. We're kind
Would you ever leave Hamilton, David?
I would, but I would always go back. Like I would be happy to go and do a couple years in Europe and just sort of experience that lifestyle.
From Hamilton to Europe, I was thinking just come to Toronto first.
I don't think I would.
Wow, you rather slingshot yourself across the ocean into Europe than just coming into Toronto and just chill with us?
If I were going to do something like that, it would have to be something extremely different than what I'm into now. Which Hamilton to Toronto, isn't too much of a difference, in lifestyle. So. And I really enjoy being on the fringe, right? We're outside of the megalopolis that is like, the Golden Horseshoe in the sense that I can get out to nature. And I'm kind of on the edge of escaping.
I don't think you're giving Hamilton enough credit. Hamilton.
And that's it. So, and I love Hamilton. I'm from there.
Hamilton is like a black hole, Adam. Like I remember when I moved to Hamilton, the first year I hated it. The second year, I hated it less. The third years, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else but Hamilton. It's crazy. And then as you live there, and then it gets even worse when you start commuting outside of Hamilton and coming to Toronto, and you're like, ew, 3-lane streets, ew. What's this all about? Highways that have like 4 lanes. You know what I mean? There's something very holy and authentic and clean and calm and quiet about Hamilton that you simply do not get in Greater Toronto. I mean, although Hamilton is part of in the Toronto core area, and I have always missed that, especially Ancaster, Dundas, like around the McMasters. Whereabouts are you?
So I'm in Ancaster,
that's
which
the,
I have like I have some Dundas envy just because again it's like
Dundas
a little bit
envy.
of like
It could be a series.
smaller community, but Ancaster's always been home.
Stony
for me.
Creek. Have you been there?
Sure.
Yeah.
But then so recently I bought a property downtown, and it was just always my kind of idea to get a property just to basically almost give back in a way that obviously it benefits us, but just the amount of heritage properties that are there from the big boom time of Hamilton that I never got to experience, but my parents did.
Right.
You walk around and there's just amazing architecture in these houses that some of them have been preserved, but you'll just Hamilton will be this place where there's beautiful houses everywhere, and then there's just this apartment block in the middle of it because over time, with the kind of decaying part of the industrial heart of Hamilton, they didn't get taken care of, or they just put people, multi-res in there. So it's really interesting that you have these really beautiful neighborhoods, but then there's multi-res everywhere that just brings like vitality to these neighborhoods. So it's this really cool, unpretentious, parts of Hamilton everywhere that you can get into these, beautiful kind of
That's right.
century homes.
Restoration Linton. David the renovator dabbling into real estate. And what David is referring to in terms of certain areas that are just got hit hardest in Hamilton is the east side of Hamilton, which is the opposite of the west side and the opposite of what's happening on would the mountain be the north side, or would it still
it's the south side?
The mountain would be the south side. So just for those that haven't been to Hamilton, which first of all you're missing out, second of all it's as you're coming in from the west, or more specifically as you're coming down the mountain or from the south, you enter into the east, and as you're looking down, it's like you see these fiery steel like you can actually see the underworld. As you're approaching it, and I think they got hit the hardest. I think in terms of
sure.
like, you know, unemployment, domestic violence. I had a friend of mine that owned multi-unit residential buildings in that region, and oh man, lots of headache, lots and lots of. I don't know how it is now. Is it still pretty much the same thing?
There's definitely parts of that still exist, and I think always will. You know, and it's the issues that is gentrifying, and it's pushing people out of the areas that they typically would have been. So, you know, you see East End homes now that are, you know, very high priced and pushing people out, and you know, that's great in one sense that, you know, we're kind of bringing back these neighborhoods and families are able to kind of move back into them. But, you know, it is a question of where do the people go that have always lived in Hamilton. They kind of grew up in their East Enders and they're being pushed out. So, you know, I don't know what the answer is. It would be a very tough kind of decision of how you deal with that, but it's coming. So, yeah, I mean, that's Hamilton though. That is your sort of
H-Town.
It's funny because, and it's maybe just because I've always lived there, but there's this weird sort of difference between when I see, you know, people on the street in Hamilton. It's just sort of, they seem a little bit calmer, or and just maybe because
what are you talking about? We're calm.
Or whatever. And then when I go to other places where it's just like same scene, I feel more uncomfortable, and I don't know if that's just because I'm like, oh, these are Hamiltonians. I know that they'll just like
Hamiltonians. I think I felt that calm and cool, collected energy on the south sides and on the west side. There's not much of that going on in downtown and as you approach the east side. I think this episode is turning more about Hamilton, and I don't mind this at all. I used to be a bouncer in Hamilton.
Nice. Whereabouts?
Okay, there we go. So it's like, let's talk about this because this is a good segue. So when I was 18 and like I wanted to make some money, I was a bouncer in this club called Ballroom.
Get out of here.
Yes. Do we have more stuff in common now?
Yeah, do you? I didn't know that anyone knew Ballroom because that was just like I was going there when I was 17 or 18, right? So.
Do you remember the falafel store right across from Ballroom?
Vaguely. I think it's a pizza shop now.
It was Gino Pizza before.
It's before,
and
okay.
and then right beside Gino Pizza there was also a shawarma place.
Okay.
So there was 3 places you could get food on a smack 2:30 a.m.
Right.
as you leave Ballroom and before Ballroom was Monopoly.
Turned to Puzzle. Like, yeah.
Monopoly turned to Puzzle. Wow. Like so. Anyways, I bounced in all those clubs.
Ballroom was like
Ballroom
my favorite.
was my favorite. Like,
I wasn't like a club guy, but it was just again this sort of vibe
like
at
hip
that
hop,
time when I'm
reggae,
like 17 or 18.
Yeah, like hip hop, reggae was a big scene there, and I think I enjoyed that in a great way. I mean, actually, you know what? I was a bouncer, and like, there were times that I wanted to kill myself, but like. It just comes with the job and so forth. But anyways, there were 3 places you could eat. And there was that falafel store. There was Gino's Pizza or the Sheraton Hotel.
Sure.
Those are the 3 places. So we would go for shawarmas to the Middle Eastern restaurant or a slice of pizza. Or if you wanted to have pancake at 2 a.m., we would go to the Sheraton. That was the rotation. I don't know. Pancake was big back then. So yeah, like it was good times back then, man. So you used to be a ballroom guy. Yeah. Maybe I kicked you out of the club. Were you a rowdy kid, or you just used to go and just do your thing and leave?
No, I was probably trying to stay under the radar because I was underage and
you wanted to be quiet.
It wasn't causing a scene, but no, I mean, I think I'm very much like I am now, pretty happy-go-lucky, especially.
Yeah. It was. I enjoyed it. It was just something to do. You know what? I was 18 years old, and it was my final year of high school, and I was like the king. Because I was the bouncer at Ballroom, and everybody wanted to get in. All the underage people wanted to get in. So yeah, it was good times. Good times.
Unreal. I haven't sort of heard or talked about that in a long time, so thanks for stoking that memory.
No problem, man. I was like, this Hamilton segue is a good one. Let's just build on it. Yeah. Tell me about COVID, David. How is that impacting you in positives and negatives? What are your key takeaways from COVID?
I mean, it hasn't necessarily directly impacted my life. And I don't mean to say that to sort of diminish the problems that it's caused, on the positive side, it's just sort of allowed us to have more family time and kind of chill. It was situations where we were, every night driving somewhere to do some activity with kids,
Right.
which I'm really excited to get back to because I think they need it. I love interacting socially. So
Right.
I'm really looking forward to a time when we can do that again. But, just have some perspective and just say, this is a limited amount of time. We got to do what we got to do to kind of stem the transmission of it. So let's just, gear back and do what we do, spend some more time with family, play cards, do puzzles, whatever you got to do to kind of, keep everyone going. Lots of walks, lots of skating, all these kind of things. Right.
Nice.
And then on the downside, obviously, like I look at around and, a lot of people don't have other people to hang out with and do those kind of things. Lots of people obviously get more anxious. So from a mental health perspective, my concerns for others are obviously sort of heightened coming out of this. And then on the business side, obviously, we are kind of pivoted our software just in a short period of time to help restaurant owners or other small business owners, anyone in tourism, all these kind of businesses that are significantly impacted. I certainly have some concerns about what happens to those people. I mean, that's that. And then if we're, now getting into energy efficiency, it is all of those great programs that require human interaction. So people going into homes and doing energy audits, people going in and doing installation of insulation and windows and stuff like that. So again, I'm hoping out of this, there is some recognition, and it seems like there is, that a green recovery is the one that we're looking for. We kind of have the ability now to repurpose people that have been waiting to do something into jobs that are going to help our greenhouse gas emissions and all these things. So I think that's my hope, is that if we can take something out of this that is positive, is that we took some time, everyone had a chance to sort of, relax, think about things, and then come out of this and kind of a roaring 20s kind of mentality after the last Spanish influenza or whatever, is that it's just this huge boom. Because if you think of, there was this huge, push, and I'm hoping that we can do that too, is come out of this next pandemic and say, there's all these people that want to help, they want to do something, they've had a chance to think about it, they've had the opportunity to create businesses as they were sitting at home, and now they're ready to kind of, when things open up, go in and do all the things that they've been thinking of. So I hope that we come out of this and it's just everyone can kind of find their own way and do things that are hopefully incented heavily by governments, that we were able to sustain everybody while things were bad. Now let's come out firing,
kicking into high gears really, and keep going.
Infrastructure projects are the things that we need to do, from the biggest things to our own homes. So I think that's, if there's anything positive, that should be kind of the focus of what we're looking at.
No, I agree with you. I think how COVID-19 affected me was on the personal side. The kids were driving us crazy, and I couldn't wait for the schools to open so I could send Celine to school. Like, if I'm being very honest about it, my relationship with my wife evolved, and I think we were able to connect and hash out things and figure out what's the next thing for us in terms of like moving forward and with the kids, and what would happen potentially if we don't have our businesses, which is a very frightening thought. Enter March 15th or 16th, and when the shutdown happens and we literally went down to zero. That was the first time in, I would say, 6 years where Canada Energy Audit wasn't making any money. And it's a very, very frightening thought, especially if you define yourself as an entrepreneur and as a businessman, and Canada Energy Audit has been your shield to kind of justify who you are, and now someone takes that shield away from you, and now you have to really redefine yourself of what kind of a person you are, and look within yourself and look at all the things that you haven't really worked on, and the reason why you haven't worked on it because you always hide behind Canada Energy Audit success.
Sure.
And now you have to look at it dead in the eye and can't run to the office to kind of get away from it. So that was a huge eye-opening for me. And I think I always say this to everyone: COVID-19 did not change anything. It simply exposed all bad practices that you have had, that you could ignore or procrastinate, both within your social or professional life. And I think that's what COVID-19 did. It just put it on steroids, and you have to deal with it. And if you were having bad business practices in business, it exposed it. If you were a bad father, it exposed it. If you were a bad husband, it exposed it. And then you have to look at a very hard look at yourself and figure out, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to end it, or you want to make it better and move forward? I think, and I on the relationship side, like my relationship with my brother exponentially improved. We actually started a business as a result of COVID-19, which is basically helping business owners with daily wellness assessment and safety audits and screenings and testings and so forth. Right. He's a physician out of University of Michigan, brilliant guy that we're doing that business with. And I think the big thing that I learned from COVID-19 is that resiliency is key. Tell us a little bit about Parachute. So obviously, for our viewers, what is it that you guys are doing, and what are you excited about as we're going into the next 6 months, 12 months, year or two down the line? Sure.
Yeah. So Parachute Software is a company that I founded with another guy, Elvin Sato. He's the technical kind of brains behind the business, and I'm the business side. We started in 2005. We've been doing energy efficiency programs since 2007. And we really have just grown organically. I mean, we, kind of bootstrapped the company. We were moonlighting with other, technology jobs. I went to the job that I did my internship at, which was a startup software company, where I met Elvin. Went back there when I graduated, and just sort of, built a software that my mom was working at the call center for Car Heaven, and that was just taking donor cars in and processing them. Just asked her one day, because we were looking at what opportunities can we find, and she kind of explained it. I said, can we build software for what you do? At a minimum, we can fix these little things that are causing problems. And I mean, right away, it was a big kind of efficiency gain for her program, and it just exposed us to a number of different other companies that were kind of involved in that program, and kind of organically grew. At the time, we were working with Clean Air Foundation, which became Summerhill, and a lot of our kind of contracts were just kind of exposed to us. And I think, we were never really out there pushing being, salespeople. We were just kind of creating internal champions. Our customers became champions for us because we were just doing the right things, right? We weren't, we were just making it easy for them to kind of dive into technology, which I find a lot of software companies don't do. I think that's probably what we take forward today is just like, if you ask people, what's Parachute software like? Just like, they're just easy to work with. We don't complicate things. We don't kind of speak in technology terms to people that don't understand it to try and, make it seem like we're doing something.
Whenever I hear the name Parachute, it reminds me of the movie Saving Private Ryan. And at the beginning of the scene, what's the the Band of Brothers. Okay. Band of Brothers, episode 1, where these soldiers are just parachuting at the Normandy beach. And for some reason, I can't shake it off. Every time I hear the word parachute, it's like, go, 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 go. And I was like, that's not what he does. But it's like, it's such a cool name. And I just keep going back to episode 1 of Band of Brothers. It's, I don't know, it's working. Maybe you may want to do something with that. I'm thinking David with a parachute, old school parachute, camouflage. Right. Do you want to save your business? Call us. And that's all I think about when I think about the name Parachute. It's a cool fucking name.
Thank you. I mean, people always ask me, they go, what was the decision behind it? Which is like, I love the name. Mm-hmm. The domain was available.
Yes, that's the thing.
We have this.
Who are these fuckers that are buying all these domains? We need to find them.
I know.
And just lash them.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems crazy to me.
And the thing about naming is, right, they I don't like that question. Oh, what inspired you to come up with this name? Because I've learned a long time ago that that you should just pick a name and just focus on creating value. Like, don't spend too much time on the company's name.
Right.
You know what I mean? So my standard answer, like the most recent company that we created, my brother and I with another gentleman on the technology, is Code 9 Technologies. And that's around the whole COVID-19 preventions and so forth. And if people ask me that question, oh, what inspires you to go with the name Code 9? It's like literally it took me 1 minute. It was either going to be called Code 9 or COVID-19 Stuff Incorporated. And then we decided to go with Code 9, and then we just kind of started like focusing, driving value. But, kudos to you that, the name is cool.
Right.
The name is very cool. And you have the parachutesoftware.com, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So
it's a bad name, David. It's a bad name.
I got Parachute coffee for Christmas. I see like Parachute. There's like a government thing about Parachute. I'm just like, I was there first.
You were there first,
And it was always like the connotations, right? It was just something for me, and we always heard this was like this kind of scary transition into software. It was just like, we'll take care of that. Like we're the like sort of the commune influence. You jump out of the plane. That's all you got to do. We're the parachute. We'll take you down.
From me. He wasn't thinking about jumping out of the plane, so I put that in his head.
And the one thing that I, if I ever would, speak to people about creating a business and how you do it, is say yes. Everyone's just like, oh, you got to say no to this and this because you got to focus your energy. I'm like, say yes, especially in software projects, because you never know what that's going to turn into. And I can think about so many projects where we're just like, man, we put so much more time into that than we thought we would. We didn't really charge the client for it. They were happy. And then sure enough, 2, 3, 5, 10 years later, it turns into a Hydro One contract.
You got it.
It turns into a Enbridge contract.
And if I build on what you just said right now, is like I'd say yes, and do not underestimate the compliments. So for example, when you walk into an engagement and you're working on this, the compliments of it could be interactions with that particular person that is in charge of it, getting to know other people as a result of it, other technologies as a result of it, other suppliers and vendors as a result of it. And these compliments will probably, in some cases, will give you more dividends than the actual deal that did not fall through. And I think the reason why we were so fortunate enough to be part of the Enbridge HER program, because a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was working with Enbridge on the solar water heating project, which was a fucking disaster. We had like 100 pilot solar water heating systems. I was at the job site 12 hours a day. We were trying all kinds of new things. Panels were getting broke. Expansion tanks were. It was a disaster. It was a shit show. And it was like hot summer days. We're installing panels, and oh man, it was such a tough summer. But fast forward 3 years. And then when the HER program started, they got the wind of me, and they knew I had a service organization. And because I worked with them on the solar water heating project, they invited me to the pilot.
Right.
Do not underestimate the compliments because it's huge. And I think one other thing is that saying yes is very important. So I always tell people, say yes. And then kind of get your foot into the door. But then that mutates to something else. Later on, if the answer is not fuck yes, don't do it. Sure. You know what I mean? And I think that's the transition of yes, and then fuck yes. Yes, you keep going. This is the last time I'm going to swear this. I'm not going to stop after this.
That's now the title of this episode.
Like, fuck yes. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. Being in a restaurant business, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I've done, computer science degree wasn't that hard. I was working 50, 60 hours as an IT consultant, doing my MBA part-time simultaneously, being a father with the kids, running multiple businesses. But working in the kitchen and managing a restaurant, it's still by far the hardest thing I've ever completed. And honestly, and I always tell people, do you want to get into the restaurant business? So here are the rules that you should follow. You should only get into the restaurant business if you were born into it and you don't know anything else. That's number one. You should get into the restaurant business if you're willing to buy an already established, successful restaurant with at minimum 5 years of positive financial track records, ideally 8 years. You should get into the restaurant business if you're gonna focus on the coffee side of it, the margins are better than getting into perishable and non-perishable. And last but definitely not least, if you want to launder money, those are the only reasons. Those are the only reasons why you should get into the restaurant business. Other than that, buy for yourself some fucking S&P index funds, make your 7-8%, and move on with your life, because you are in for a world of hurt. If you don't have that passion, you are bound to fail, because all the odds are stacked against you. The margins are hovering between 12 and 7%. What does that mean? That's your profit margins. That means the margins of error, you better not fuck things up. Like if that perishable food goes wrong, well, guess what? 12 turns into 11. And there is not that much of room between 11 and 0 and worse, minus 10. And I think the margins are terrible and the hours are horrible. And everybody has a fucking opinion now. Everybody has an opinion in this line of work. And then, you know what I mean? The minimum wage doesn't help. It's such an uphill battle. And if you don't have that crazy passion and desire to a point of insanity, there is no way you'll make it through it. Like, I have the most admiration and the greatest amount of respect when I walk into a successful establishment.
Right.
I was like, man, these guys have gone above and beyond. I need to see the chef and I need to see the kitchen. It's that bad. Yeah. Like, I have to see it because I know the amount of work that they have to put into it to make this successful and go beyond the first year. 90% of restaurants fail.
Yeah.
Those are terrible odds.
Right.
Terrible margins, terrible odds. Don't do it.
My wife is born into the restaurant industry. She is Greek, so her parents came over here. And, at 2021, started a restaurant and kind of built it up, bought some real estate, and was able to kind of successfully, run a restaurant for 20 years. So like all my admiration in the world for him to be able to do that, to come here with, nothing, the typical kind of immigrant story.
Right.
And to be able to do that in the restaurant industry. So I think, at some point back then, I mean, that was their option, right? That's what they knew as the Greek community. So, what the downside to that is that my wife grew up in it, right? So it's not like she was doing extracurriculars because her parents were working 16 hours a day, both of them. And she was in the restaurant, right? So that's the only side I see. It's like, she doesn't have as many hobbies because she couldn't. She was a part of this family business that, grew up in serving the family business. And she's, amazing. She's the best family person you could ever imagine. And her family's amazing. But that's the life that you lead in that situation, is you are tied to your restaurant. And they were able to eventually sell it and kind of have that freedom now. But, that's a significant part of your life where
it takes a special human being. It takes a special, especially to keep a restaurant successful for 20 years. It takes a special human being. And
right. Yeah, I think, we kind of talked, the first sort of issue that's been in place has been the continuation of available incentives. I think the second biggest thing is collaboration, right? It's always been this difficulty. It used to be, can we get the electric utilities and the gas utilities to collaborate so that we're sending one person in and being able to do everything, right? Not just sort of focusing on gas and electric. And now we've gotten into this situation where there's this sort of dynamic shift, at least in Ontario, where the rollout of these programs is changing. It's changed from, the LDC and the ISO managing them to maybe, municipalities, and then federally managing them, to having, Enbridge's program. And we saw that a little bit in Greenon, where there was this kind of stacking of incentives, and
it was terrible. It
really difficult to explain that to the customer, which isn't a good customer experience. Potentially, clawing back some of that and saying, what, we didn't figure that out originally. You got these from Enbridge, we can only give you this from this Greenon program. So, I mean, these are all challenges that, from our perspective in Parachute, it's like, we want to do the best thing that we can do possible because we want these to continue. We want to do as much as we can technically to make that a good customer experience, to be clear on things that what the customer is going to get. And I think that really needs to come from the policy, is to say, we're going to do this program, NRCan's going to lead this, we're going to give this many free energy assessments. How do we integrate that with existing utility programs? How do we integrate that with municipalities that are going to have money that are also going to be running these programs? And how do we, bring that all together so it's clear to the customer, and that on the back end of this, that we're managing who's claiming what, where's the incentive coming from, all of these things kind of need to be figured out, and they need to be figured out ahead of time, because the worst worst thing could be is that it doesn't. And then, there's front page headlines of how this program's botched, which obviously
wasting
hurts
taxpayers'
everybody.
money.
Yeah, wasting taxpayers'
I mean,
money.
that's what I'm extremely concerned about. And I haven't seen anything concrete that tells me that they're doing something, excuse me, that they're doing something about it. I mean, I think there's talks of collaborating, and I think they want to build a one size one fit all solution for everyone. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think obviously in Ontario, utility companies have the major jurisdictions, and they have managed an energy efficiency program before, and they should for this one too. I'm not sure how that collaboration will happen here. And even if NRCan allows for the utility companies to manage it, invite SOs to come in, and then as far as the rebate goes, it's a bit of a collaboration between the two. That model may not work, let's say in BC or in other provinces. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that NRCan has. And I mean, we just got an email from them yesterday saying that we're going to have a meeting. They're going to set up a webinar session in March talking about all these key questions that everyone has in their mind. And I'm like, okay, so if you're having a if you're coming in with some sort of an answers in March, when do you actually anticipate for this program to get rolled out? Even with vaccination in mind, right? I mean, the shots in the arm is not going as fast as everyone wanted to go in Canada, so we're looking at probably May time frame for something concrete to be rolled out. So it's all that stuff is to be hashed out, right? And it just makes me wonder that how messy is this going to be? You know what I mean? Because if you take the utility guys out of the question, and it seems like they want to complement it, and the utility guys, they have their own mandates to go with it. Like maybe it would be a scenario when HER goes into a pause or a permanent pause, and then you just have to work with a federal program and then kind of see where that goes. As much as I would love to see it, I don't think it will happen where, at least in Ontario, the Enbridge would be the governing body, the managerial body. I mean, it makes perfect sense to be, because I think considering the fact that I've been doing it for the past 6-7 years, puts them in a position to know how to run the program, know how to structure it, to ultimately get the best yield for the taxpayers' money. I just don't know if the policymakers in NRCan see it the same way.
The virtual audit, to me, if it's nothing more, and I think it is more, but if it's nothing more than a customer engagement tool, then that's great. People are aware of energy efficiency in their home. If they know that, that's the battle. I go back to starting in energy efficiency in 2007. I had to explain to people what that meant, right? It wasn't in headlines. The government wasn't talking about it necessarily. Now it's a bit of a household word, right? And what can you do to your home and your daily life to use energy more?
I still remember the first time I set up the blow door test for people, and then they're like, "Oh, what's this?" And then I started like making all kinds of crazy stories. I think at some point I was like, "This is the demon catcher." Anyways, let's end this thing on this funny note. So, David, thank you so much for making the time. This was a pleasure. We covered a breadth of topics from Hamilton to family, virtual audits, and your core business
and fuck yes.
Fuck yes. Don't you forget about this. And it's been a pleasure. We look forward to having you again. Thank you for making the time.
Thank you very much for having me. I love what you're doing here.
Thank you. Bye.